We adjourn. Says on, but we're back. We're back. It's 5:30. We will now open the public hearing for the approval of the final budget, the annual budget. So I guess with the public hearing open, the mic is open. If anybody has anything to say, we'll just kind of leave it open for a little while and see if anybody wants to participate. There's probably a few people maybe just showing up yet, so we'll just kind of take our time. But yeah, I guess I don't know. Is anybody downstairs waiting or out in the hallway or anything?
There wasn't when I walked in.
Okay, that's yeah, they didn't go to the auditorium, did they, Craig, or something? Okay. Just looking at the sheet that Marlis gave me, which was after approval of the preliminary budget, it looks like the current increase of everything just stayed the way it is 6.67%. Is that, am I reading that right? Or?
That would be for district, that's 6.67, to go from that 16.99 mils to 18 mils. That's a decrease there. The very first thing that you with that 3.88 increase,
Yes.
that would be added those extra meals on a capital project. I want you guys to see what the increase would be on that.
Right, so this third page here with all the different funds and everything and the total increase, that is with the increase to the capital project?
Yep.
6.6.
Yep. That's 3.88 million. So you guys told me to, I had it at a little over 1, you told me to go up to 3 and put that money in for gravel. And then you also told me to put in 2 more for the air. So there was a 3.88 million increase, which came to 6.67.
So that's what everything in there.
Yeah.
So currently then, with everything that was added in there, we're looking at a 6.67% increase.
Yep.
Which equates out to about $212,171.16 to the total budget.
Well, it's out low.
Right, but I'm just saying as a whole,
Yeah.
so that's what we're looking at, right?
The total million.
Yep. Well, I guess while we're waiting for anybody, I guess probably the big change or the big discussion point would just be the capital projects and when we talked about putting some extra funds in there, if that was something we were going to use for the airport or not. We don't have to specifically earmark it. Right? I mean, like if we had the funds in the capital projects, we can use do what we choose, but right, like if we wanted to use something other than say an airport or Eastman.
Well, I think it should be earmarked, because that capital projects levy also supports the county jail, which Gary has so much appropriation for that. And then you get 2 mil for the airport,
Sure.
which is 80-some thousand, $84,032. And then when you told me to take it up to 3 mils, there was $79,410 for grant. So yes, it should be earmarked.
We could, if we don't do the airport thing, we could use that for gravel too.
Well, we can use it for, capital projects, which is basically anything with basically infrastructure in the county. So I know we wanted to raise it a little more, even above what we talked to the airports, because that was a possibility within our courthouse project. If we had some unknowns. Because I mean, when we went up basically 2 mils preliminary for the airport. And then there was another 1.88.
Yep, that you said put in. See, it started out with 1.some mils for the jail. And then you guys told me to go to 3 mils.
Yeah.
Which I would have given an external $79,410 for ground. And then for the discussion, you said go up to 5 mils, put those 2 mils in for the airport, which is $84,080.
Because I know that one possibility for this fund was that where we're utilizing the ARPA funds for the courthouse
We
improvement.
didn't put anything in for the
Right.
courthouse.
Yeah,
No,
but there's already some in there for the courthouse, right?
not in capital projects.
But that's in a different, that's in like the
We
building.
figured the
fund.
ARPA fund.
Right, but we still have our,
Courthouse maintenance,
Yes.
50,000.
so I mean, there's some money in there, like just all of a sudden you're doing a part of the project and you needed an extra $10,000. We could utilize that.
If
Well,
there's
it's in-
room,
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, there's,
I looked down at Craig, of course, because that's pretty much, he manages that budget.
right. But a lot of the things Craig probably wants to do probably coincide with the courthouse improvements anyway, probably for some of that stuff, so.
Correct, yeah.
There is some money on top of the ARPA funds if all of a sudden we were 10,000 short of like finishing a bathroom where we could utilize those funds.
Yeah,
We don't, if we run out of ARPA funds, we can't just stop the project. We do have some budgeted funds
correct,
to get us across the finish line if it's something we really want to do, so.
correct.
If we were gonna cut anything, the only, we could cut was from capital projects.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. My point is if we have some funds in there, I mean, I can just tell you, I mean, unless there's testimony that's gonna be in favor of it, I probably received a dozen phone calls on the airport topic. It's probably the only topic I actually received any calls on for the budget, and I got one in favor of it. And I got basically 11 people from all over the county and almost exclusively farmers that told me that
Well, that's what I
they
got.
support the airport. I don't think it was, none of the conversations were that, they support the airport, they want to support it, but they feel like it should fund itself, or there should be a variety of different things that happen before the county gets involved.
Yeah.
That even included them in paying increased fees on things, kind of like what you brought up before, maybe they're not charging enough. And that was kind of the same conversation I had with farmers from Hazelton, Linton, Strasburg, Westfield, I mean, all over the county. I was actually kind of surprised. I didn't just get it from.
One guy.
And the other thing I will bring up is that it's obviously the only regional serious airport, but there are other airports in the county that got brought up to me by a couple different people that if we're gonna start giving money to airports, then Hazelton's airport was already figuring out their budget proposal. So it's kinda, I mean, and I'm not gonna sit here and play this, well, if you give one to one airport, you gotta give it to it all, but all I'm saying is there is an unintended consequence to that theory too, that there are some airports that are self-maintained that might wanna start asking for money too, so if you would even start an airport mill, it's probably not gonna end up exclusively going to Linton anyway, so,
Yeah, I wouldn't do a mill right now.
well, no, but I mean, even just the idea of,
Right.
the Linton Airport's asking for the funding, they're the ones breaking through the wall, but they would be the only airport probably asking for money down the road, so.
Well, that doesn't just go with the airport, that could be anything.
Right, but I'm just telling you, even just in the world of airports, there's at least one other airport, maybe two, because I also heard of another one that they want to start maybe upgrading a lighting or a radio system or something, and now, so. I guess my opinion, just to make a long story short with that one, is I kind of arrived at, maybe my original thought was that the county probably shouldn't be in the position of putting money towards the airport. That's kind of the information I received. It wasn't a majority, obviously, of the county, but it was a pretty good poll, so if anybody's got any difference
But
of
we can
opinion.
still leave it in the budget because we can use it for something else.
Right, we don't necessarily have to cut it out of the budget.
That's what I did.
But I think Marlis's point, and especially what we talked about, one thing we're gonna have to do is, like, the county road and bridge and the road district budget are over even what we can tax. So we're gonna have to cut out of there, or we're gonna have to appropriate funds from some reserves, which we don't have those kind of reserves. So the pretty easy decision is the biggest numbers in there is gravel. And I think if we would leave them 2 mills in the capital projects and designate that for gravel, and then probably utilize some permit funding later on if we want to do a gravel project, we could cut that money out of these budgets. That would be,
Why wasn't there no gravel approved in the budget?
Oh, yeah, there's some approved in there. How much is approved for gravel already, Marla?
20 and 22, nothing in 23.
Okay, in your road
What was the
district,
reason for that?
pardon me?
What was the reason for that in 23? There was no money appropriated in the budget. It was 0. In 22, it was 220, 24, the proposal.
Because they didn't appropriate any money for gravel.
We thought we had enough because we crushed a bunch.
Because you crushed it.
well, and the other thing we did too is that was because we crushed at like the end of the year.
Yep.
Or no, we had already paid There was something, it was a timing issue, that's why we didn't have to budget it, it was already basically paid for.
Yeah.
That's where, so we didn't have to budget for it that year because in '22, I think we had already paid the bill or something. I mean, we did crush a lot of gravel in '22, so that's why last year when that came about, I think we took that out of the permit fund. Which, I mean, the one thing we've always agreed, the permit fund came from permits using the roads. That's where the money should go back, so if you're gonna spend it on gravel, that's probably the most pertinent thing to do with that permit fund, so.
On the road equipment purchases that show here too, I just got a question on that. Why is it from 23 that show here on these sheets here, you probably see it. 125, they show actual expenses of 23, 830 of what, monthly, correct? And they show less than 157. What are they looking at?
Well, the main reason for coming up with the additional 30,000 was one we had agreed to that one-way blade or whatever that Skylar had come in, and what was that? And then there was one other kind of smaller, there was two things that equaled roughly 30 grand, and that's why they put that increase in there. But that's also another discussion too, where it's,
I think Scarlett's right here, right?
yeah, Skylar's here.
So what was it?
But I got that right? I mean, the reason for like about the 30,000 increase in purchases was because we talked about that one directional blade.
32,000 for that.
Yep. So that was the reason for the additional request from last year. Is there anybody else that's snuck in? Anybody wants to speak? Public hearing is open.
I'm just wondering where, are there copies available, what you guys are looking at for?
Yeah, I don't, Marlos, you got some copies or? I guess I got them from Marlos here, so.
I just was wondering if those are the same as with the budget I had proposed.
Well,
The
we're
copies that they're looking at is the mill levies. That's what they're looking at right now.
yeah, we're just looking at total budgets, like the general fund, and we're not looking at line items like the preliminary budgets, so.
If it'd be okay, Your Honor?
Yeah.
My big concern is the airport that's being discussed, to where, I haven't been out on that road, but I'm assuming it's in approximately the same shape, the roads that I'm driving on, to where everybody thinks my roads are good enough, so what's wrong with the airport road?
I think that road out there should be pretty good. We redid that whole road.
That's a couple of years ago.
Which one?
Airport
We're
road.
going to the airport.
The airport should be pretty good, I don't know,
Yeah.
I haven't been out for years.
You didn't come, I drove on
Does it
that.
sound?
Good.
It's washboard, it's a
It's
sand.
washboard really bad.
There's sand,
That's just
it's
sand.
what it is.
Yeah.
Because all I've read was what's in the paper, the discussion was, commissioner's minutes, and it was brought out that the road should even possibly be paved down the line.
They were talking about, I think, that stretch going off the Federal Aid Road, just going west into the airport. I think that was the discussion, right?
Right, and I mean, I brought that up more than anybody, and the only reason I did that is I feel like if we were gonna contribute to the airport, something to do with the road made the most sense for the county rather than just participating in the general funding of it, and that's when they had made the comment that to pave and to fix that road the way they wanted to is gonna be that 80 to 100,000, and that's why we came up with the number in the preliminary budget going, well, if we're maintaining the road anyway, that's kind of a similar type thing to participate in rather than just going, here's $100,000, do what you want with it. we were going to try and earmark a specific part of the project at least, just to,
Randy will appreciate that.
well, I'm sure, I'm just saying that was the reasoning. It wasn't so much that, oh, we're paving the road, that has to happen. I felt like if that was the contribution that the county would make, it was something that benefited us mutually too, which we did maintain the road. I don't think it costs $100,000 to gravel and blade it, but if we were gonna participate in a project, that made the most sense.
How long of a stretch of a road are you talking?
It's only a quarter.
It's a quarter of a mile.
Quarter to a little better than a quarter mile.
So it's like,
I mean,
if
Off
the,
the main federal road.
so the ambulance has to drive 20 miles on bad road and they got a quarter mile good road.
Right, like I said,
Huh?
is that 20 miles from Linton to the airport?
No, I'm just saying if the ambulance is out someplace and has to come in,
Oh.
bring somebody to the airport, they have to drive 20 miles on gravel road and they have to drive a quarter mile on highway to get into the airport. I don't think that's gonna make.
right, I mean, like I said, it was a way to try and differentiate the difference between what the county participated and didn't. At least if you're gonna do it, it's like, well, we did the road, we didn't have nothing to do with the other stuff, I mean, and even that was,
And that wasn't confirmed, I mean, that wasn't
Well,
approved,
like I said,
it was just a talk.
it was a way to at least participate in a way that we normally would participate in like a project, where we're doing a road fix, something that made sense at least, if you're gonna
All
participate.
these two projects get done a lot of times, you know. Where that's the reach out my concern, because there's a lot of roads in the county that are in dire need.
Mhm.
That I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I thought before, if we're gonna give $80,000 to the airport, we could spend on road stuff, more gravel on roads or whatever else.
Right. Well, I mean, the whole purpose of it was just to get to here, to get to the discussions phase, to, I mean, the phone calls I got, I was excited about, because I meant people were checking into it, gave me their opinion. I had a pretty solid opinion on it, but I was curious how far it would go. Maybe there was support for it, maybe it wasn't, maybe I was being too rigid, and I was kind of reaffirmed by those that I talked to that, I don't think it was a bad idea to probably just stay out of it, so.
As I understand, we're always short on money, even for 10 loads of gravel out of somewhere.
Well, I mean, it's always the case, right? I mean, if you spend 20,000 here, it could've went over there too, and so try and do your best to get it in the right place, so.
Well, I'm sure it would have been all more in the Linton area, right, Gary? I mean, more people in Linton wanted that than probably anything, no?
Well, there are some farmers that, would prefer to have it too. I'm not saying a lot, but I know there are some that do, because they come go there, spray, planes are sitting there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, if ever need emergency, but right or wrong, I don't know.
So did anybody ever question how often the airport is needed for emergency service or the fixed wing?
I called the guy over in Wishick that runs that, and he said once in a while, he said, it's not that terrible much, but we use it now and then. I think since COVID, maybe it was a little bit more, but if they use it 2 or 3 times a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, the helicopter still lands up here on Main Street, does it not?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, it does.
He said he could have
Because
got,
they talked about that they need a helicopter pad out there, but they said they've always landed on Main, right, Gary?
Yeah, the difference would be a fixed wing aircraft, that if the flag farm or something like that.
And there were certain scenarios the helicopter might land out the airport. It had something to do with weather, right? Because it's easier to find the airport with the technology and the lighting and stuff versus Main Street and Linton. So, I mean, there are some times where it does land out at the airport. It's, splitting hairs on how much it actually is gonna, some years they might use it 3 times in a month, and it might not get used for a year out, but it's hard to say. But
yeah, I think he said during COVID, they used a little more, if there was
Probably.
not enough room here, then they would ship somebody out, they'd take them to the airport and ship them out.
I was told, and I'm only saying, somebody that confronted me, a couple guys did, and they just felt that the guys with the city board were gonna present it to the board, the commissioners, thinking that it would be approved a lot easier than if it went to a vote of the public.
Oh,
Well, what they should do, if they want it so bad, they should put it on the mill levy, on a
On a vote.
On a vote, yeah.
Yeah, and let the people voice.
If they want it, if people want it, that's different, but, yeah.
because I can't see as far as the gravel roads, that getting any more traffic than any other gravel road in the area?
No,
That quarter mile stretch off the main market
No.
road, Yeah, I admit sandy ground, it makes it tougher, but we would all like a paved driveway.
Oh, yeah.
So is that something we have to vote on?
Oh, yeah, we're voting on everything. We're gonna be here all night. Well, what we'll have to do, or historically what we've done is try and come up with a proposal, I mean, whether people have certain ideas and try and get to some common ground, you know, on some of these things. Usually a lot of them is pretty simple stuff, you know, I mean, and then there's a few things that if you wanna haggle over them, we come to a point. I think if we get to have too many different situations, we'll probably have to vote on some line items. Those will, if you get a 3-2 vote on whether or not something should be a certain way, then that's the way we'll do it, and then we'll put it into kind of a final budget and have to approve it that way. I mean, that hasn't really been that way a lot of ways, because usually a lot of the things that happen, I mean, like, I'll just tell you some of the ideas I have. So like with that road district, 475,000 of it needs to get cut out because it's just too much. It's just more than we can even tax for. I mean, if we want to utilize some of these things, like right now, 300,000 of it's gravel. Historically, especially with us having access to that permit fund, we could take that gravel out, we could still gravel. It's not like we're not doing any graveling, we'll just use the permit fund instead of, you can't allocate or, you know, basically budget for money you don't have. So if you're gonna do something outside of the budget, it needs to come from your reserves. So you can't put 300 in and go, oh, we're gonna spend it out of reserves. You put 0, and then if you're gonna spend that money, then you know, whether it's a project or anything, then you take it out of whatever reserve fund or, right, but you can't budget for something you technically can't budget for, which we are at the maximum mills for the road district, right? That's the reason why. So that's why that number of 475, which it's normal because in the preliminary budget, we didn't cut anything. So this is where we cut. So I would say right off the bat, I would take the 300,000 out of the gravel, because if we're still gonna spend that kind of money, we can take it out of the permit fund. We have 900 and some thousand dollars in that permit fund. So we can still utilize, it's not like we're eliminating gravel, it's just we can't budget that much. So I would propose we take the 300,000 out of that. So then that leaves about 175,000, and then I just went through each little line item and just took a little bit out of each one, so we still have, like the equipment, road equipment purchases was at 125. My suggestion is to put it back down to 125 and take that 32 out. Now, I know we said we were gonna use that 32,000 for that plow, we still can do that. That's what the permit fund is for some of those. I mean, if we already agreed we're gonna buy it and they're already on the way, that's fine, but you can't budget for something that you can't afford. So, well, I shouldn't say can't afford, but you just can't tax for it. So that's where some of those ideas to get them down to maybe last year's budget, get that budget in line, and then some of those items, and I already talked to Skylar about it, just if we made an agreement and told him he can buy it, then we can take it out of the permit fund, which if it's going to the roads, I think we've always agreed that's the best place to spend the permit fund money, so. I mean, that's just an example, like another one would have been like, engineering, we've been budgeting 20,000 for, we historically use 5 to 10, so I thought of cutting that down to 10,000.
Yeah.
So we cut 10,000 out of that. With contractors, we usually budget around 45 to 50,000. We probably use about half that, so we could probably take 10,000 out of the contractors thing. Again, if we have a project worth doing and it's something we all agree on, well, we have some other funds, you know, you can even use funds within your road district. If you budget 200,000 for fuel and use 150,000, you have 50,000 you can use for tires or a contractor. So, I mean, so the idea is the budget as tight as you can, do the best we can to get it as close as possible. And
How much were you cutting out of contractors?
well,
Engineering.
so my proposal would be to take 10,000 out of engineering, 10,000 out of contractors, 7,000 out of the equipment leasing, 32,000 out of the road equipment purchase.
Equipment leasing, you can't do, you can't take out of equipment leasing. We already have those leases in place.
I think they're talking, if we have to rent something, I think you just have it as a quick.
Right, I don't
Okay,
think,
yes,
that's
for road district.
that's the equipment leasing for road district, because what I'm doing is I'm looking at the historic numbers for the last 2 years and realizing that we're not over budgeting, but we're not spending that much. So I would rather tweak it down a little bit, and if we're a couple thousand short, we pull it out of a different part of the fund.
The leases that are.
That's my whole process here, I'm not trying to,
The leases that are in place in the county road.
yes, no, I think when this means equipment leasing, I think Skylar's right, it's equipment rental type stuff, which more than likely we can pull out of fuel or culverts or something else if we're, if we're that short, we'll figure something out. And so, and then I put, cutting 5,000 out of culverts, which that's another one with, I mean, if we need culverts that bad, I'm sure we can. Well, right, I mean, I'm not trying to cut it in half, so if you take a couple thousand out of each one, and that's how I would do a home budget, so.
You got quite a bit culvert yet, Skylar?
We do, but, we got an estimate on replacing 2 that are failing, and they're 10-foot culverts.
10 foot tall?
Yeah, they're big ones.
Yeah, okay.
And then the hydraulic study said we have to put 3 in there. It's $68,000 just for the culverts. So,
Steel culvert
yeah, steel.
with flared ends.
They actually just cut the flare.
Okay, okay.
Cut it in,
How long then? 80
60 feet.
60.
Well, like I said, these are just my recommendations I did at home to try and get that number down. I mean, if anybody's got any different opinions on it, it's fine. I'm just going through what I thought made the most sense to keep each line item fairly sufficient, but trying to just historically look at what we've spent versus what we budget and get it closer to what we've historically spent. We might have a really rough spring and we might blow through our culvert budget by May, and we're probably looking at the permit fund or taking money out of clay, rock, something anyway, so I mean, that's just the way it goes, and if we have one of these mild years and there isn't a ton of trouble, then we can get away with that and probably use that funds to replace a different part of the budget that's, maybe fuel goes up, but you don't use as much culverts, so you try and divert them funds that way, so then I did, I took 30,000 out of parts, labor, and supplies. I took 20,000 out of utilities, propane, and internet. I took 5,000 out of tire repair and tires. 5,000. And then I took 75,000 out of the miscellaneous cutting edge clay and rock, with my belief that that's also something we could probably utilize for the permit fund if we need to purchase rock or clay or something for a big road project or something. That's kind of the idea on that one, 75,000. And then 2,500 out of the telephone, cell phone budget, and 2,500 out of technology. Just because that was another one where we were budgeting about 8, we were using about 2,500 to $3,000, so there's probably a little room. I mean, like I said, we go over these, any one of these funds goes over any odd year, but the budget itself is still relatively solid, so I think just try and stay close, and if there's unexpected, one thing I noticed too is if we have unexpected issues, if it's major weather stuff, there generally seems to be some kind of state aid or something with it too. So a lot of times you budget for these things and then like the winter or something, I mean, you can't bank on that, but.
They got fencing and stuff. Yeah. Got it.
I didn't take anything out of fencing and science because I don't like we spend about what we've been budgeting for, which is, I know this year we were only at 300, but last year we spent 11,000 and we budgeted 10,000. So I didn't want to touch that one because it seemed like we were pretty well budgeting about what we were using, so.
How come we have to come up with so much less there?
Sure.
Science.
Well, probably because we spent a bunch of money in 22 and we had enough science. I mean, it's just an assumption, but I mean, that was my science with it, I guess if you want to call it that. I looked at the budgets that looked like they were maybe getting a little over budgeted on, and those were the ones I picked on. And, I could be wrong with it this year, but it seemed to be the year before and the year before that. If we were about 10 or 15,000 under budget, I decided to take 10 or 15,000 out of it because that was the easiest way with still keeping most of the money we've generally been spending in that budget. Was the goal. So as far as the county road and bridge, we're over 214,000 in that. There's 220,000 in gravel. So I just figured take the 220,000 out gravel. Just zero it out. And that would wipe that out. Because again, if we take out $500,000 in gravel, that was maybe a little over budgeted, especially because I don't know if we have to crush this year. So, well, my analogy is, okay, if we spent in the neighborhood of 1 to 300,000 in gravel hauling, which I think was a fairly successful deal, if we would put together some kind of project again like that, you could take 250,000 out of the permit fund, and you could do a lot of graveling, yet hiring a contractor, maybe do it into multiple projects, and that would still be money well spent, and we could probably take that with our gravel stockpiles for this year, and then next year we might have to look at maybe crushing or something, because some of them contracts are getting to be 4, 5, 6 years old. We probably only have a couple of years left on the leases. We should probably, you don't want to be in a position where you have 200,000 yards of gravel in a year to get rid of it. I mean, you should be getting those piles down on some of these longer leases unless you know you can renew. If we want to start renegotiating with some people, fine. If you don't think you can renew, you should get that pile down so you can get rid of it in 1 year, not have 200,000 yards in 13 months. You're over a barrel, so.
Sky, did you dig quite a bit out of that Bosch pit?
Not a whole lot, but there'll be some coming out yet this year.
So you gotta start putting on the box pit too.
Yeah,
Well, at Calvin's, I don't know the exact numbers. I know we have a sheet, they did a survey, but I mean, we just did a bunch of crushing up at Wolbom.
Okay.
The Knoll pit, I know we took some out, but we just crushed there. And the Vanderhorst pit's gotta be going on 5 or 6 years on a 10-year lease, so that's a pit we probably wanna start just dwindling down a little bit, or at least in a position where we're not desperate to get rid of it, I mean, if they wanna renegotiate, great, then maybe we can crush again there if there's some, but I think we
that's
crushed it all out, so.
pretty much empty there. I think.
So you might as well start looking at getting rid of it, because unless you're gonna store a stockpile down there, they'll maybe lease you again, but they probably won't do a 10-year lease, so.
I think Calvin's was pretty much empty too there. As far as crushing anymore.
Oh, with crushing, yeah, probably, but I mean, we did quite a bit of crushing
Yeah,
there.
I mean, there's pretty.
Even the Wolbom pit, I think, is pretty well crushed out now too, so. I mean, there might be some if they wanna go after it, but I think a majority of it's done, so. I think it would be good to have a year where we probably just pay to do some hauling and get some of that money on the roads instead of sitting in a pile,
Sits on the
so.
pile.
So that was my analogy. If we would follow that, that would pretty much zero out the overages. And then in my opinion, if we're not gonna do the airport, the debate is whether or not we wanna leave those 2 mills in the capital projects. I think if we're willing to discuss taking 200,000 to 300,000 out for gravel, another 80,000 out of the permit fund ain't gonna hurt. I think we should cut the 2 mills out of there too and lower the taxes a little bit.
I don't know, I guess I think what we spent last year on those roads, 200,000 of gravel.
Well,
If
roughly.
we have to do a little more, why don't we do a little more, get some more gravel on the roads this next year?
Right, but I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is
Huh?
if we're gonna, I don't think leaving these 2 mills in the budget is gonna save us. If we're gonna be willing to spend, let's say, 250,000 on hauling gravel, taking another 80,000 out of the permit fund's not that big a deal, and we could cut 2 mills out, which I think
How much we got left in that permit?
permit fund was at a little over $900,000. So I mean, there's a fair bit in there, and one thing I will suggest with wanting to spend it, without sounding too much like a liberal, but with inflation, that money's getting to be worth less and less, you know what I mean? Like, not advocating spending all of it, but I think rat holing it might not do us the service that we're looking for either, because I would rather start using that permit fund before we start taking more taxes. That's just, I think taking 2 mills out would be just another way to try and get this budget down even lower. And if we have the money in the permit fund, I think we should do that. It's my opinion, but we can discuss that. Yeah, here,
I just think that,
911,000 is enough permit
Permit
fund.
fund.
Yep. Which we haven't spent much of it. I mean, the little bit we have spent out of there, we've gotten replenished with permits over the years too.
we're not getting too much more for that anymore, are we? Permits?
Oh, yeah, I'm getting, they're changing some leads out and stuff. I think there's like 2,500 in there last, or that I put for the days.
I guess I just feel, being we hauled quite a bit of gravel last year, I think we should double those efforts next year maybe and see what we get done. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a good move.
Well, and I think if we would bid it, I think if we would try and do it
early in
as a
spring.
project, I think we'd probably even get a more competitive price probably.
Probably.
We hired someone off the cuff that was willing to take it, and they
Yeah.
gave us a price, and,
We do it.
well, I mean, it was a good deal, but I think we could probably even do better if we would prepare ourselves this fall and this winter.
A lot of the contractors that I talked to bidding it out, they're gonna bid it out at that roughly the same price as what we paid. Cause they
Right.
average it off that anyways.
Well, right, but my point is the bidding is probably gonna be cheaper than when you pick someone up in June who already has a full slate. Like what we paid this year might be the bid price, but if we would just hire someone off the cuff again, it might be $10, $20 an hour more, or 30, or you know what I'm saying? Because generally, once you have a schedule filled out, your bidding goes up a little bit, because if you're not looking for work, it's time to either make money or keep your schedule where it's at. I'm not saying save money versus maybe what we paid this year, but we might save money versus what next year's fit you in the schedule price might be, is my point.
Well, aren't you?
You might get several bids.
Excuse me, aren't you as a county or a government entity required to open this up for bids?
Up to
Is it 250 grand or
200,000,
Okay,
which we were under that, which, you know, by quite a bit.
but I think it's still helping business.
Oh, God, yeah, no, I think when we decided to do it, it was too late to do bids, but now that we did it and we liked it, I think the plan should be going forward. And that's the reason why I wanted to bring it up, is I think we should utilize that permit fund. Just because we're cutting it out of the budget, I don't want people to think, well, they cut all the gravel out, they're not gonna do any graveling. I think we should be more aggressive with the graveling, but we do have some funds we can use without trying to.
Well, like I said, I think we should double our efforts there and try to get twice as much out. You know, all that went to the Westville area this last year, maybe we can get some up north.
Well, I guess
Yeah, we gotta hit.
the idea that's stuck in my head is $100,000 went a long ways. It went to roughly about a week to ish. So if you did 300,000 and you split 100,000 and did a week, and you did maybe, let's, just for example, somewhere around Braddock, because you're close to a gravel pit, somewhere maybe east-west of Lytton because of the Bosch pit, and then maybe went again down Cattail Westfield or east of Hague maybe and tried. If you could put a project together where you could get efficient and you'd get a good solid 5-6 days with them guys, you could get a lot done in each little district. I mean, it might not be enough, but if you kind of focused your efforts that way, you could get a little bit done all over the county in a short amount of time.
I think what they did like last year, they went from this end to that end, you know, they had 5 trucks over here, 6 trucks over there, and they hauled this way and that way, and I think that worked pretty good, right, Skylar?
Yeah, I mean, went as good as it could.
So,
Distant hurts you.
Well, and I think
I
that's.
say distant hurts you. Hard.
Yeah.
yeah, that takes a long,
Takes a lot of time to drive to get that load to where you wanna go.
but I mean, if you had a crew halfway up by that Wobon pit and some over here and Knoll pit hauling that way.
And less distance, you could have 3 trucks, that distance,
Well, and I
you
think,
have 5, 6.
I think that's the reason why this discussion is so important here. If we're willing to, like, we're gonna put 300,000 into it. You can start to design a project that would work, where and maybe it's not the best idea to split it up into 3, maybe split it up into 2, but you get more impact in those 2 areas. That's something where contractor, your supervisor, your blade guy, everybody get together and go, this really worked, this didn't work. But at least our job is to go, are we committed to do that? Well, I'm fairly certain we're pretty committed to doing that, so.
I think everybody wants their taxes cut, but I think the way it sounds, a lot of the farmers, you know, we don't mind paying a little bit more if we get something done, you know what I mean?
On
Well,
the roads, right?
The roads are the biggest
That's the
thing.
thing people talk.
Well,
We'll
and
pay more taxes. We
That's
got
the first thing
something.
that-
I did have an epiphany though, I mean, you know, a lot of times when people ask where does the money go, the money's in a pile.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a lot of gravel and we focused on crushing, which has been great. We haven't really focused on getting it from the
Getting it
pile to
to
the
where it
road,
should
and so I think that's why this year our focus needs to shift to getting it on the road. And if we dwindle our stockpiles, then next year we need to look at possibly crushing or something, but I think we could get away with a year where we focused on just hauling it, and instead of spending money on putting it on a pile, let's get it onto the dang road.
That's what I think too, you know.
I mean, I think that's the reason, I think what we're talking about is probably the right way, is
I think-
skip the crushing and let's get it on the roads. And I think the contractor rate was a good, the way to go, not to mention our own hauling of 2 to 3 trucks, whatever we can do. I mean, it's about the best we can do, so.
Yeah, I think we're kind of behind on the 8 ball on some of that stuff.
Well, I think like we talked about before, we spent all these years crushing and not hauling. Now it's all in piles, and that's where the money is.
But like you said, even 300,000, I mean, even 400,000, you know.
Well, I mean,
It's a starting point.
right, I mean,
It's a
I think it's one of them things you just,
Well, I'm
the
just
main
saying-
thing about it is not pulling it, I mean, I don't think we need to do it in the individual budgets when we have that permit fund, which,
Well,
since I've been commissioner and that permit fund has been where it's at, we always agreed it should go back to the roads, so.
okay, so if you think we're okay with the budget the way it is, then if we need more graveling, we can take it out of there.
Right, and that's why I'm just saying, if we're willing to go that far where we're willing to spend into the hundreds of thousands out of the permit fund, another 80,000
out of that.
85,000 is not gonna be that big a deal, but cutting 2 mills out of the budget that we didn't need, I think is,
Right,
I
yeah.
just think it sends a better message, what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to maintain a reasonable budget, but we're still willing to invest in the roads, I think.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think that'd be okay.
Public hearing's still open.
I'm not for raising taxes either and stuff like that, but there is gonna be some different funding coming out that is like a match, so we should have some money in there in case we need to match that for these projects.
Well,
Well, you need to match the project.
Well, you know, there's like usually it's an 80-20 split, right?
Oh, those federal aid projects?
Federal aid projects and stuff like that, so.
Right, but I mean, I will say, we are maxed on our road budget, like for the mills, which is usually the requirement, more than like, say, a specific dollar amount in the fund. That's why we're taking it out, so we are at, I think, our 18, is it?
18.
So usually that's the requirement, is they want you in that 90 to 100% of your mills, which we are in, so. But even though we're cutting these out, we're still meeting that mill requirement, so we should qualify for funding if there's some available through that.
Right, we'll qualify, but if we don't have the money to match it, or do our percentage.
Well, that should be in there.
Right, well, my point is the money that we're taking out is not, it's not getting taken out of the fund because it technically can't be in there. We're over our mills that we can even charge, so that's the reason why we're pulling it back. That's the reason why if all of a sudden a project comes up and we need to match it, that permit fund is where I think we should be doing these things, especially for the road projects. I don't think we should be doing anything more than we can with the budgets when we have money in that permit fund. That's I don't want to dwindle it down to nothing because it's a nice, it's a nice safety blanket for doing things like this, and it helps us afford some things, but that's where my willingness, if we're gonna purchase a piece of equipment, if we're gonna do a project, it should come out of the permit fund on stuff like that, not sit there with a permit fund that full while we're trying to increase a mill somewhere else. That to me probably isn't the right way to do it, so that's why I got no problem with the ideas of still doing projects and stuff, it's just as long as the permit fund can handle it. Which I think at this point, we can do quite a bit, so. And the other thing too is like we've ran into before, you have this budget and you find out there's certain line items that you just don't hardly even touch, or it's not the big a deal. Well, that can go to meet your shortfall on fuel prices, or you overpaid for rock because you did a bigger project than you wanted to, but your telephone bill or whatever is $1,000 more, so you can still, that money's all still in that pot. It's just an individual line item might have spent more, but another one you didn't spend as much, so.
What was health insurance this year? Health insurance this year?
15. That's for a 2-year increase.
The 15% is what it was?
15%.
We went 15%?
For 2 years.
That's a
So
big
it's
item.
7.5.
What if we got another year?
That's a big item.
Another year left on?
No, it didn't go up last year, it goes up every 2 years.
But it hasn't gone up for a couple biennials,
Right.
right? I mean, because that one year we thought they warned us it was gonna go up 17%, it went up like 0.7% or something. That was, some of their projections, so it was bound to go up at some point, but it stayed pretty flat for,
But that was with PERS, right?
No.
yes.
Insurance.
Yeah.
But we're losing that PERS deal now, right?
No, that's just the
In
retirement.
2025.
That's just the
That's-
Yeah,
Okay,
no, that's just the retirement.
okay, okay.
It's a different deal.
But now they gotta revote on that. Did you hear that?
What on the PERS?
Was that a part of the
Yeah,
ORD
that
too?
Did you hear that?
Yeah,
That's gonna be a 2-week special session at that rate. They got a lot of stuff to discuss now.
Why are they re-voting on that?
Cause
Do you know anything about it, Sharon? I mean, just a little. I know, I just heard it on the news a little bit.
Yeah, I think because the board contested them adding legislators to the board, they filed a lawsuit
yes.
against the legislature, and the Supreme Court ruled that the way that they attached it to the OMB bill was against the law. Because it
Well,
had
not
nothing to do with the OMB budget, so they made that whole bill null and void, which then made the new members that were on the PERS board no longer eligible to make decisions, and the PERS board, after they had added the new legislative appointees and the governor appointees, had made the decision to delay the implementation of the defined contribution plan until 1/1/2025. But they're saying that board wasn't able to make those type of decisions, so they'll have to vote on it.
But then a big part-
I'm sure they'll still do
A big part of that though is they dive deeper into it and realize that there was 68 different items put into the OMB.
it. And they've been.
And it's
doing
supposed to be single, exactly,
Yeah,
but the main
forever.
reason that the decision had so much impact is because it was unconstitutional the way they were actually
Yes.
doing the OMB bill as a whole.
that. So, yes.
Which, you know, is funny because there was a handful of legislators, I know my dad was always one of them that complained that
They were sticking.
they
fork
make
in
this,
it.
they make this shepherd's pie of bills at the end and it's everybody's wish list that wouldn't have passed the floor.
Alone.
There's $500 million in there, I think, in that
Pork
OMB, right,
push it
it's the
on
federal
one.
government,
Pork deal.
2.0, they, and it's all these little things that they fit in there and, you know, so,
And it got challenged.
so they're gonna have to hash out 60-some different, I mean, maybe they can get them to 10 things, but it's supposed to be single line,
It
but,
should be one item.
well, but when they have the one item, they use the term germane, so you can
Yeah.
use several things that are a part of infrastructure, so
Yeah.
they might be, infrastructure is the one line scenario, but there might be 5 deals or 10 deals in it, but,
So it's gonna get broke down big time.
right, and this special session isn't gonna be 1 or 2 days, I don't think they're gonna be there for a while, so, good thing Dad got his hay home.
That's good.
He's gonna be up there for a
Well,
while, so.
that's a bad deal, the way they do that.
It is, it's.
And they stall and they stall and they stall.
Well, and the
Right at
reason,
the end. they
Then at
push-
3 o'clock in the morning, they push it through.
Yeah.
the reason nobody fought it is because everybody kind of participated. You know, I mean, everybody got their little wish list, so then they would vote for it, and the few that didn't were looked like troublemakers,
Yeah.
but they were the ones that didn't like that process, so. So anyway,
Should all be thrown out.
well, it was.
No, they should all be thrown out.
Oh, well, good luck with
They
that.
should be.
Well, that's why they had an election every 2 years, so.
Get names and throw them out.
Yep. Well, I think it's safe to say that this public hearing is officially over. Nobody seems to be coming. So I guess to, make a long story short, I mean, with all them discussion items we had, does anybody have any additions or different ideas or? Does anybody have any problems with the way we took out of the road district or the county road and bridge? It's about the least painful way to do it, I guess, unless somebody's got a different idea.
No, I just, like I said, I just think we should keep enough in there that we can do some.
Do what we did there.
Well,
I think it was effective, I think it was a good thing
and like I
overall.
said, if we could double those efforts, I think would be great, if we could
With
do
new
it.
trucks, you can never get ahead of the game.
No.
Never. No. It's like combining with 16 combines, you got 3 trucks on it, it doesn't work. And the one auger, it doesn't work right there, don't work.
Not very good.
No. We all gotta work together, I just, that's the way it is.
So what was your total you came up with when you cut that out?
So when I did the cuts that I did, that actually, we needed to cut 475,000 out of the road district. Those cuts I did actually came out to 497,000, so I actually took 22,000 out more than we had to. But I felt like that might even actually lower it a small, maybe a half a mil or something.
So go down, let me see.
You know, they were saying that you're supposed to levy the 18 mils in order to qualify for some of these grants, but now I heard later on that it was for only organized townships, but I don't think there's been any clarity on that, so I would suggest you just do the 18.
Well, I mean, that's where, I mean, the conversation is like, I mean, a half a mil is $22,000. I mean, is that really gonna save anybody any money where it could propel us into saving a lot of money with some grants? So that's where,
I would just
you
keep it
know.
at the 18, I'll just put it in cash, I'll keep it in the road district fund, but keep it in cash.
okay,
You're just gonna go for 18 mils?
I think we should, because there hasn't been much clarity on that, applying for these grants. When the legislators passed some of these bills, I believe it's a legacy fund, right, Skylar?
I believe so, yeah, some of that.
And you have to apply for these grants, and if you don't levy the full 18 mils.
You don't qualify.
I've heard 2 different stories. I heard it's just for organized townships, and I heard later on it's for unorganized too, so
So
I
how do
don't know.
we find that out?
So I would just
And
say.
you find it out in about July after your budgets are all approved.
Right.
And yeah, it's the same thing with the health insurance thing. You budget for something, you find out after your budget's approved that, oh yeah, by the way, we didn't need that much.
Yeah.
And then you budgeted for this money that,
So how much is in that prairie dog fund?
The prairie dog fund, we're getting like 1.3 million. On that sheet I gave you with all the funds, it's in there.
1.487,
Okay.
1.5 million.
The one she gave today?
Yep. Which that, if you remember, most of that was earmarked for those 2 box culverts, so that money was mostly spoken for. If not all spoken for, it's by the time that project's done, it'll probably cost more than we originally quoted. So. Well, I guess to stay exactly at the 18 mils, the one thing we could do is we could, we'll just cut the road equipment purchase, we'll just cut it 8,000 instead of 30,000. Because that would put 22 back into it, and that would be about 475, which is exactly.
Okay, the road equipment, you're gonna cut to what now?
Well, we were gonna, I suggested 30, but we would just cut 8,000 out of it. And then that would give us the exact amount you told us we were over. So we would be at the full 18 mils,
Okay.
just in case that's what we need to do, qualify, which, if that's the reason, I don't feel like cutting ourselves $20,000 is gonna save us any money, that might hurt us in the long run.
What'd you do here then?
So I just, for that road equipment purchase,
8,000, oil and gas, you were what?
I didn't cut out oil and gas, I'm terrified of cutting from that one.
Culverts, you were down to what?
Unless you bought fuel in there.
Culverts, I just took 5,000 out of. Here's the sheet, I wrote on the sides there with all the cuts, but that's just kind of what I wrote for. Well, then the same thing would go with the county road and bridge. That's 6,000 more than we had to cut out, so we were gonna max out the mills on that. Again, $6,000 cutting out of it's not worth it, so we could probably just, I think putting $6,000 in gravel is pointless. Can we just add 6,000 to miscellaneous and put it from 10,000 to 16,000? Or do you wanna put $6,000 back into the gravel?
That's up to you guys.
Well, I'm just saying it doesn't make more sense when the year end, it doesn't really matter. Let's just put 6,000 back into gravel so we have some money left over for gravel.
So you're gonna have the 6,000.
There'll be $6,000 in gravel for the county road and bridge fund, so that way we're on the exact number that you told me we were over. That's what we cut out. So we'd be cutting 214,000 out of the county road and bridge gravel line instead of 220.
Okay, 250.
Do you write all that stuff down, Miles? Well, I mean, I have it here too, but I'm just thinking,
No, I wrote it down.
the cleanest way to do it would probably just to, if you wanna read it off, the way you.
Well, what I would do is I'm gonna retype it, I'm gonna have Skylar make sure. But what I did is I cut 300,000 on the gravel, 8,000 on road equipment, 10,000 on engineering, 10,000 under contractors, 7,000 under equipment leasing, 5,000 from culverts, 30,000 from parts, 20,000 from propane, 5,000 tire repair, 75,000 miscellaneous, 2,500 for phone and 2,500 for technology.
Yep, that's what I mean, that was my original. And then 214,000 out of the gravel for county road and bridge.
Yep.
Okay. I guess the cleanest way to do it would be to have that in a motion, since it's kind of separate from the mill levy, so if you guys are in agreement to that, I would entertain a motion to just.
That tires and repair, is that gonna be, I don't know, is it got enough in there?
-5.
Well, like I said, historically, it looked like the year before we spent 50,000 in there. This year, we were on pace to probably spend about 50,000, so I took 5,000 out, we should be pretty close, I
I
mean.
mean, still don't know, I mean,
Well, no, you don't know, but I mean, my point is if 5,000 here or there on one of these lines isn't the end of the world. That's why taking a little from every one, the pot still has a majority of its money in there, and we should be able to make it work. And if we are that short in something, we are blessed with the permit fund if we need to pull 5,000, 10,000. I mean, if it's something really like, holy cow, you can't do without that. And you know what? if we're 10,000 short and something, maybe we just have to live without it too, you know, I mean, that is the conservative mentality.
Well, I'm just thinking
Change
like
your way of thinking.
tires and stuff.
Maybe a
like that.
patch a tire instead of buying a new ride, you know, I mean, those are the things, we've been spoiled for some years, maybe it's, you know, that's,
Talk to Terry, who's down in the shed right there. That's what we did. That's what we did.
well, I think there's enough in these funds when you
Well,
really
you
take a look at it, actually, I mean,
Talk $5 grand.
like I said, you look at our budget, the way we're going, some of these are 20,000 over what we thought we were gonna spend, another one is 40,000 more or less than we thought we'd spend. In the end, that pot is still there for
Yeah.
that budget.
You can just shift it over.
Right, so I mean, taking a few 5,000 out of here, there's, I don't think it's gonna impact us very much. The biggest issue is the gravel, and the explanation for taking out of the gravels, we use the permit fund, so we're still doing that gravel, we're not budgeting for it in this particular budget.
We're not gonna
Because we
mine the
can't.
gravel, we're gonna put it on the roads.
Right, no, I don't think we should pile it, I think we should put it on the roads, and I think Skylar's even in agreement with that after talking to him. I mean, we looked at the stockpiles, I think we could get away with a good year of spreading and then reassess next fall, and maybe we can get by with 2 years without crushing.
But then it's gonna cost us.
Well, no matter what we're gonna do, it's tough, it's gonna be tough no matter what. There's gonna be a point when you won't be able to crush, it just, maybe you'll end up running out, you're gonna have to make gravel like they've been talking. You might have a place with clay and rock, you'll have to haul in sand, or vice versa. That's how
Like we
it's,
talked earlier.
the place of pit run and screening places is running out, they've been played out by a lot of people, or it's too expensive, people don't farm on there, so. It'll get tougher and tougher, but I guess if that was the case, those ideas for the road district and the county road and bridge, I think we should have a motion for those particular items, then we can talk about this capital project if we want to leave them 2 mills or take them out, so. Unless you guys aren't in agreement, I would say we just approve those cuts.
I think that'll be okay. I'll make a motion to.
Commissioner Everly makes a motion to, do the said cuts in the road district and the county road and bridge.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Materi. Is there any more discussion on those items? Not hearing any. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? County road and road district is settled. So now the rest of the budget, basically. I mean, there's really not a whole lot.
There's a lot.
I mean, we pretty much were, I mean, everybody pretty well kept it pretty well the same. The only issue is that we did add them mills to the county projects, or the capital projects. You wanna cut them 2 mills or keep them the same? And if you do keep them in there, what do you wanna use them for? That would be the question.
I would say if we keep them in there, we should use them for gravel or.
Well, I would leave them in there, we could use it for anything, really.
Well, the only thing is, like Marla said, she had a good point, is that there are some things in that budget that are already earmarked for, so if you're gonna have money in there, it should be accounted for, because certain funds are allocated to certain projects, so if you have a pot with $210,000 in there, you know, I mean, there should be, a majority of it should be tagged. If there's 10, 20,000 in there for a miscellaneous one, then you can't just have 200,000 in there, then all of a sudden we go and spend 200,000 on gravel, and we can't get something done at the courthouse that we said we were going to do, so. Right, so I would say the main thing is be allocating those 2 mills, which would be roughly about $84,000.
Or just let them go.
Or the other thing to do is to take them out and go pretty close to where we were at before, which was roughly that 118 to
I
120,
would leave it in.
so.
Leave it in and feed from
In
that.
case we need it, but what are we gonna earmark it then?
Well, I think,
Market for road district as well.
right, I think you could use it as an overage for the road district, you know, or something like that, just basically, and that would kind of alleviate, like you said, with the tires or the culverts, I mean, that would cover that culvert project or something, so maybe you leave it in there and use it for you save it towards the end in case you need a big culvert or something really expensive and your other line items are bleeding down or something, you know. It's either that or cut them out, so. I think we should make a motion on that specific mill, and then if there's no other discussion, then we'll approve the entire budget. That way those items were voted on.
So we're talking about 2 mil?
Basically, the capital projects budget, or the capital projects mill levy, if we're gonna keep it at 5, or if we're gonna take it down. I mean, it doesn't have to be 2, you could take 1 mill out, you could take 4 mills out, whatever. I mean, so that would just be a discussion, if you wanna keep it in there as it is, or if you wanna take some out of it.
If we keep it in there as it is, what, are we gonna pretty much be balanced as far as taxes, or
Well, that's where, like, all the stuff we,
are we gonna be pretty much balanced as far as taxes without increasing it too much?
Leaving it in there.
Well, you're adding those mills in there, so yeah,
Right.
there'll be a little increase.
Yeah, but how much, I mean.
6.67%,
6.67.
the sheet right here. So that's where that, if you're at $212,000 would be the total increase, so if you took that 84,000 out of there, you know, now you're looking at $130,000 increase. That was the reason why I was advocating probably just taking it out, because if you are gonna, I mean, $80,000 on top of what we're already willing to spend on the infrastructure of the county, another 80,000 out of the permit fund is not the end of the world, but if we take 2 mills out and lower that.
On a $100,000 house, those 2 mills is gonna cost $9 a year.
$100,000 home.
Yeah.
$9.
$9.
Yeah, but if you increase,
On the air front.
Doesn't sound like a lot.
I know, but if you increase $9 for 10 years in a row, that's $90 a year. I'm just saying, there's a cumulative effect, like, that's with property taxes, it's always the small increases, but 10 years down the road, you're going, man, 10 years ago I only paid this, now I pay this, it's cause it's $9 a year.
Well,
so
it's
it gets
$9 here,
excused.
$9 there, $9 here, and pretty soon you got quite a bit of money.
I'm advocating for taking the 2 mills out completely, because
I think we should too.
I think if it came down to it, whether it was culverts, tires, fuel, we could either make it from the fund we have, just from the budgeting as a whole, and worst case scenario, we do have the permit fund if we needed to alleviate some of that. Or we do without, you know, God forbid, you know. I mean, you know, that we're budgeting like we have to pay for everything. There's some things we could probably do without. So it's just kind of the way it is too. I think it would send a good message, because I know there's a lot of talk about property taxes, and there's a lot of subdivisions not doing enough, and I think we should do as much as we can. I think
I think you're
I think we all
probably,
gotta give it a little bit.
I just think them 2 mills we added, I think instead of keeping them for something else, let's take them out, and if we need them, we do have some funding, or we think of a different way to fund it, or, you know, the one thing I've learned as county commissioner, like I said, if you have a horrible spring, a horrible winter, I'm not saying it will happen, but historically it has, money has come through with the state or the feds, and here you budgeted for all this stuff, and if the day doesn't come and you don't need it, and you didn't need the state funding or the federal funding, then you're still almost over budgeting. And if something was that bad that you go through your issues and you're short,
so what do we have in
there's
for,
state or federal funding, I mean, that.
we have in for disaster funds, or for, wintertime snow removal funds? 300,000. I mean, didn't we usually have 300,000, you know?
No,
If we're, I don't know what you're saying.
Like for emergencies,
Okay, for emergency, I appropriated, I believe, $450,000
for this year.
for 2024.
450 grand.
I did that very much.
yeah, but we don't have that, you took the mills down to 0 for this year.
But I still had appropriate. The reason why we didn't have to do a mill levy is because we got all that money back from the state.
Exactly, my point was, is we spent the emergency fund down, we had almost 500,000 in there, we spent it on snow removal, snow cats, all that, and in the end, we ended up getting reimbursed by the state anyway.
So that's replenished.
Well, I'm thankful for it all, and you can't always depend on that, but in
But
the
that's pretty
environment
much-
we're in, I feel like,
That's replenished pretty much.
yes, the current emergency fund is at 495,000, that's why Marlis is not, we're not taking any mills for it this year, we believe the $500,000 is enough for the emergency fund, and that's, what I'm getting at is, we have money in the emergency fund, we have a permit fund,
Yeah,
I think we should try and take these mills down.
take these mills out.
I
That's my
think,
feelings too.
I think we should do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how
Give it to
much,
the city.
I don't remember exactly how much we appropriated in the capital project, so I don't wanna get too crazy, but I know 2 of those mills came with our conversation with the airport. We seem to be in mostly consensus, we're not gonna do the airport. I think we should just take the mills out rather than keep them for something else to spend money on, I just don't.
I'm okay with
Then
that.
it's not there to spend,
Right,
right?
the only way to cut government spending is to, not give them the money. Well, I'm just saying, that's just,
Just the way it is.
I mean, so I think if we don't have those 2 mills, then we won't spend it, and if we can, I'd be willing to bet that there will be money in these funds at the end. There's something we're budgeting for that we will get by cheaper with. It's happened almost every year, we've been a pretty I think we've been stewards of the money. We don't go over budgets. I mean, we might use one line item because of an unprospected thing, fuel prices, you can't control that, but I've been a commissioner for 5 going on 6 years, and I don't ever remember a year where it's just like, oh my God, we spent it all. It's almost always, we end up with money left over, not a lot. I don't think we over budget, but I think we're conservative, maybe too much in the sense that we always want to make sure we got an extra 10 in every line item, and I think we can do without that and see where we go.
I think we're conservative in a way too, but I mean, like on the road department, part of it, I think we gotta, like I said, double our.
Right, well, and I think the plan that we've come up with, we're all in agreement, we're willing to spend money, it's just gotta come from a different source. We have the money, we don't need a tax for it right now.
Right.
So, I guess I would entertain a motion to, either keep those 2 mills in or take them out. Or if somebody's got a different number in mind, but just be careful that with that capital project, there are some projects we've already allocated for, so don't go cutting 4 mills out of it, that might be too much. But I know those 2 mills were brought on by us, that's the reason why I bring up the 2 mills.
So more or less, does that look like it's all gonna make it that way? In your judgment?
You're saying you think the road department can make it on this money?
The way we did it before, are you gonna?
I don't know, Skylar.
We're gonna have to, right?
Attaboy, that's right, gotta have to, that's right.
Then what do you do? Send a good message to the public, you know?
Well, I think that there's a lot of subdivisions raised a lot of their budgets this year and did a lot, and I think we can be one of those groups that tried to keep it down. And I think they would just, I think that's our job. I don't really care about the press side of it or anything, but I think we're in a position where we can have a modest budget, but I still think we're funding the things we need to fund.
Well, we wanna save the taxpayers as much money as we can,
That's right.
That's what we're voted in to do.
That's why I said, I just don't think we need these 2 mills, I think we can do without them. And if the time came where we did need them, there is some funding mechanisms we could use. And
Get it moving.
if there's an emergency scenario, we can declare an emergency, we have the emergency fund at our disposal, we're in pretty good shape, I think. So, I would recommend we cut those 2 mills. I think I would like to hear a motion for that, but
I'll make a motion to cut to 2 mills.
2 mills out of the capital project.
Yep.
Commissioner Materi makes the motion,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Miller, to remove those 2 mills from the capital projects, which would basically leave it at 2.
Well, second,
Yep, right there. So the capital projects jail fund would be at 3 mills, right, so at 5, 52. Is there any more discussion on that topic? Not hearing any, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? That mill is approved. Now, I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the budget as amended. Does anybody else has any other changes that they want to bring? Other ideas?
Was the board going to vote also?
Well, no, public hearing's over. They're done.
They're done. No more.
No, I mean, if anybody has anything to say, it's fine. It's been a long day. But yeah, I mean, I think if any of the commissioners have anything to add to it, I think,
I think that looks all pretty good.
I think it's a very reasonable budget. I think it's
It's new to me, so I can't say it. It's the first experience.
good, Dan.
Yeah,
It's good.
It's cool.
Well,
I'll make,
Oh, it looks good.
I'll make a motion to approve the way it is.
Commissioner Everly makes the motion to approve the agenda, or the budget as amended. Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
Gonna start that all over
I
again.
hope not. Seconded by Commissioner Holm. Is there any more discussion on the amended budget? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The annual budget is amended and approved. There being no business more before the board, this meeting is officially adjourned.